Hello, my name's Connor. I'm a science fiction, political, and philosophy nerd, a Marine Corps and law enforcement veteran, and a never Trump Republican, and I love breaking down silly alternative media news and political content for you, and boy, do I probably have a banger for you today. There's a lawyer out of New York named Pisco. He's a very aggressive debate bro. Then we got Tom Foolery, who's kind of a veteran of the Twitch and YouTube political debate scene. They fought over, I believe, Iran and deportations. And the truth is that, you know, we expect Pisco to be fairly aggressive and Tom Foolery to be fairly obstinate. So realistically, it's going to be very funny and it's going to be very fun. And so I'll be pausing intermittently in order to break it down for you guys. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to turn on the audio. I'm going to start watching these guys fight each other, and I'll be pausing intermittently in order to break it down. And then Hamo Sart just gave a dono for $5 on top of the already 2 memberships that we got from Deus Halcyon. We're starting out the day strong. Let's go.
Her statement about the, like, with her intent to replace him in the market, that is, that I guess applies to the Hassan nuke and not the stream, but
we'll just talk about facts here. Facts are
All right, for context, before we get cracking, because I already know what they're talking about the Ethan Klein lawsuit, where Ethan Klein is suing several creators who reacted to his anti-Hassan nuke. It is very vindictive, where he seems to just be targeting people that he doesn't like, but he might have a point because these creators have been stealing other people's content and half-ass reacting to them for a long time. The community is split on whether or not a lawsuit is funny or messed up.
She's being sued for her reaction to both, correct?
I don't know. That's the part, is that my understanding was that it was about this, her reaction to the stream, but he was taking her comments that applied to the Hassan nuke and using this as intent to replace him in the market while reacting to the stream. So when he went over her video on his video about this, he's showing her reacting to the stream, not to the Hassan nuke.
So one thing I'm going to do to figure this out is I'm just going to go to the prayer of relief. It says that first claim for relief against Denims. These are the allegations. They incorporate by reference the entire complaint. It states that the entity that's in charge, TEI, is the entity here, is the sole owner, sole of. The fucking typos everywhere. It says sole of the copyrights. So just to be clear, this complaint is dog shit because it wasn't fucking proofread, because it's formatted fucking shittily, because it's a meme, so it's dog shit. And that's just another example of it. They registered their copyright, that Denims accessed the countdown episode and the nuke, that they did not grant authorization or consent to exploit the content or the nuke, and that due to the Denims acts of copyright infringement, they have suffered damages for her infringement in the countdown episode and the nuke. And so now that I've read that from the first claim of relief, from the prayer of relief, or sorry, before the prayer of relief.
Yeah, I have no idea how they're going to articulate damages. So sorry if this is a little slow warming up. I'm sure they're going to get spicy as they go through, but I parasocially love you for being here anyways. And then Tagarung, in reference to the Iran-Israel conflict, basically said, apparently Trump bitched out Bibi and they chilled out. Right now, what's actually important in the world going on is that Iran and Israel are allegedly under a ceasefire after Trump bombed the nuclear sites. So Trump bombed the nuclear sites. Then he said, hey, everybody chill out. And they said they were going to chill out. And then they blew each other up a little bit more. And then Trump said, no, I'm serious, guys. And then apparently they said they'll be serious about it. Dicky Boy for $2 says, this is for asking Jreg, or Jreg, as I like to pronounce it, the pegging question. You're welcome. And just to let you know, just in case you're like kind of new, because we do have more people than usual in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to engage with the content every 5 minutes, 10 minutes or so. I'll engage with chat as well, but I'm going to do so chronologically. So do not expect me to catch up with exactly what's going on in chat at this exact moment. I'll be reading your old chats because I actually like engaging with my chat and answering your questions and comments and all that kind of stuff. And so the argument here, Pisco is catching flack. I'm going to give you guys a breakdown because, frankly, they're not adding in a lot of color and they're not getting into it. So I have more passion and energy than they do. So I'm going to go ahead and put it into the content. So what's going on is that there's a Jewish creator named Ethan Klein. There is a Turkic Muslim creator named Hassan Piker. And they were friends and created a left-wing podcast called Leftovers for a prolonged period. What happened after the October 7, 2023 attacks was the Jewish creator has a wife who's Israeli, and he was like, hey, my Turkish Muslim brother, can you say that just murdering civilians is bad? Can you say that killing Israeli civilians is bad? And Hassan was like, no, lol. You know, he was like, lol, no, killing civilians is good, lol. And so they just fought about that. They just fought about whether or not Israel is a genocidal, oppressive, evil regime, which even Ethan Klein, the Jewish guy, said, like, yeah, they probably are, but that doesn't mean civilians deserve to get killed. And then Hassan was like, yeah, they're genocidal and evil. Therefore, I'm not going to say civilians deserve to get killed, but I'm going to imply it. And so they fought, and then they broke up. Well, after they broke up, all of the people who are on Hassan's team, because he's a very large creator, kind of like criticized and shit talked Ethan Klein. He freaked out for the better part of a year and had CPS called on him, Child Protective Services called on him in order to take away his family. And then now he's suing some of those creators because they're lazy creators. In reference to fair use, what you have to do is you have to look at things and you have to comment on them so it's transformative, which means that the original content piece is not the same purpose as what you're doing. So right now, I'm technically could be considered violating Tom Foolery and Pisco's copyright by engaging with their content. However, I'm going to talk so much over the next hour that my commentary is going to end up being so much of the content that it's going to have a new purpose, which is engaging with what they created and critiquing it. So whereas Casey Tron just smoked pot and said, oh, I don't get it. And Denims, I have no idea whether or not she did anything transformative, but I have a feeling Pisco's going to argue that she did.
But for the cause of action, will you agree, therefore, that you were wrong when you said, or when you suppose, that it wasn't about the nuke? She's also being sued for her reaction to the nuke, correct?
So I don't know if it's
Just say yes, Tom. Just go, yep, let's move on to the next point. It's not even that important of a point.
Yes
for
or no?
No, I don't think that it's her reaction to the nuke because, as I said, I think that she has stated an intent to be a replacement within the market.
Hang on a second. She is H3 suing Denims for her copyright infringement of the nuke?
I think so, but I don't think it's for her reaction to it.
Okay,
I think it's for
so were you wrong?
Market replacement.
Wait, no, but hang on a second. He is only suing Denims for copyright infringement, correct?
Yes, but that is these are different things.
Okay.
Like so when I said that you're comparing what how much XQC is reacting to it versus how much she is reacting to it, that hers is a 4-hour VOD, XQC's is a 2-hour VOD. She does like no, am I misunderstanding this?
So you're misunderstanding. So there's a broader misunderstanding we'll get to in a second. But just to be clear about what he's suing her for, he's suing her for exactly one thing: copyright infringement. And that copyright infringement pertains to both the content nuke and the countdown episode, not just one or the other. And there's only one thing, and it's the same thing he's suing for both of those things: infringement. There's only one thing at issue. And the questions about market substitution, that has to do with fair use. But the underlying thing that he...
Oh, no.
All right, what I'm going to do is...
Just so you know, your first VOD, it ended. You created a second VOD when you restarted stream. So when you were telling people to refresh, they couldn't refresh. They had to X out and go to the new VOD.
Oh, okay. So here's a question: are you live right now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So people are seeing the conversation right now, and they're hearing it from your place, right?
Yes, I just started my live. Yeah. Like while we've been talking.
So this is what I'll. This is what I'll do.
Yeah, they're both infringement.
So you were incorrect.
Yes.
Yeah, so you were incorrect when you were like, you're misconstruing that, because he's not suing her for the nuke. That was wrong.
Okay, so when it comes to market replacement, I agree that like these are both.
Pisco is just trying to nail him down on one thing, which is effectively that the paperwork says that he's suing her for the nuke and for the countdown stream. And Tom keeps moving to fair use, but these are different things. That's all that's going on right now.
Fair use, but my point is that they're not. they're not both about how much you're reacting. I think her like content nuke is going to be fair use. I think it is. Like watching it, going over it, like she doubles the amount of time, the amount of runtime in her reaction, and is like, she is yes, she's pausing literally like every 30 seconds to a minute. I couldn't even find a spot where she went 3 minutes without pausing. So I think she's going to have like fair use for the content nuke. But I don't, yeah, from everything that he said about it and from what I read in the complaint, it looked like he was saying that it was that yes, it was not transformative in the way that she reviewed the interview, and then she had a statement of intent to replace him in the market in the content nuke, but even the entire argument that the lawyer made almost made it sound like they're making an argument for the content nuke purely based off the intent stated, which obviously isn't enough to like actually be infringement, just intent
or show the damages
by itself.
Yeah, so I guess I want to step back again and say I just want to make sure we're agreeing that Denims is being sued for both the nuke and the interview, the countdown episode, correct?
Yes.
I thought you said now I'm understanding you to be saying like, well, there's a different kind of analysis as pertains both, and maybe they're using her stated intention as pertains the nuke to kind of help stir the case of infringement or preempt the argument of fair use when it comes to the countdown episode, and that's why that's included. Is that what you're arguing?
Yes. Yeah, that is my understanding from.
I don't know that I disagree with you. I don't know if I have strong.
Ooh, Tom W. Tom owned Pisco.
Opinions about what their intent is in including things. I certainly don't have a strong opinion on that, but it also has nothing to do with any of my stated opinions or why I'm getting pushback, because for the sake of all of what I'm saying, I'm conceding and agreeing that there's probably at least some infringement here. And I've said that over and over. So none about of why there's controversy into what I'm saying has to do with a question about whether or not it's infringement or not, because my agreement is, my opinion is that it probably is infringement. And so when you're saying, well, I'm misconstruing certain arguments or I'm applying something, it doesn't matter, because I've said that this is probably infringement. So it's not why people are mad at me, is because everyone can see me saying this is probably infringement. This is most likely infringement.
Yeah. So I have a couple of different points. The other one is that Ethan cut XQC out of context. One of the things that was brought up a number of times by you and a bunch of other people was that.
Wait, when did I say that Ethan cut XQC out of context?
I'm saying Ethan cut him out of context.
Oh, okay.
So you were talking about the fact that XQC straight up says, I don't care about copyright or whether or not it's illegal. Right? He just straight up says, I don't care whether or not
he has said that before. So I have an independent memory of him saying something to that effect multiple times. Now, I could be wrong about that, but I think it's my okay.
He does say it, but there's extra context right after that I think totally changes it, and is my argument when it comes to a lot of these things, is that he's stating it's not stealing unless the owner says it's stealing. That like the cops aren't just going to come after you just because you didn't react hard enough or something. It's stealing when the person who owns the content, who owns the IP, says it's stealing. So just the same as somebody goes into my shed and takes my lawnmower and puts it back afterwards. If I like that person and we're friendly, I don't really care. I'm not going to say anything. If it's somebody down the road that I don't like and they take my lawnmower, I'm calling the cops. They both did the same exact thing, but I decide when it's stealing.
As a statement of law, that's not correct, and also doesn't matter for any of my points. So I grant you that he said that. Number one, he's wrong about that, right? Like, whether or not someone cares to sue me or afterwards ratifies the what was done or the reaction doesn't bear on whether at the moment it's done, it is infringement or theft in the case of the example that you're trying to write. Like,
weirdly enough, I'm like sympathetic to XQC's argument there. However, what I do think it does is it sets a precedent for lazy streamers. Sorry if I'm not engaging with anything, but it's taking them a little bit of time to warm up. And so I'm trying to let them to actually make a point before I make a point, because if I keep trying to interrupt them every 1 minute when they haven't even said anything yet, that's obviously not good content. So as far as I'm understanding, they're warming up. They're getting it understood. This is the first point that I think is worth contending with. A lot of live streamers do React Andes. I'm effectively a React Andy. So what they do is they pull up other interesting content. They watch it with their chat. 140 of my closest friends and family are hanging out with me right now. Beautiful. Good to see you. Like the stream, please. And as a result, that is not necessarily fair use, where if you are watching somebody else's content, you don't make any commentary, you don't change it, you don't do transformative stuff, you don't increase the runtime, you're effectively jacking somebody else's content. And a lot of Twitch streamers have been accused effectively of going live every single day and being, Denim's called it content curation, where all they really do is they find something interesting and they watch that interesting thing with a chat. That's under fair use guidelines. That's not going to be fair use, right? What can be fair use, though, is commentary. So, for instance, think like Daily Show with Jon Stewart. Daily Show with Jon Stewart, they'll take clips of various news things happening, and then they'll use that as a launch point with which to do commentary on the news. And so that's effectively what we're doing, where we're blending the difference between, let's say, Daily Show with Jon Stewart versus not reacting at all. We're obviously somewhere in the middle. We're engaging with the entirety of the content. This is 6 hours. We're not going to be watching 6 hours worth of content, but we're taking the 1 hour to 90 minutes that Pisco and Tom are talking, and we're breaking down what they said so an audience can be entertained both by the original conversation and the criticism of what's going on. So I would say that I would be perfectly comfortable going in front of a judge and arguing my fair use case, because typically I'll double or triple the runtime of the content that I engage with. And I also like to think that I'm a fairly insightful human being. And that's like the reason why we're trying to figure all this stuff out, the reason why it seems more important to probably people who are in the inside than people on the outside, is because whatever precedent is set by this case could determine the future of an entire industry. That's why. Because when people are doing lazy reacts in the future, then based off of this case, they can say, oh, you're being lazy, I'm going to sue you and I'm going to get money from you. And so it might actually increase standards in the industry, where these React Andy streamers who just steal everybody's content, they might have to stop because they'll be afraid of random creators suing them for a few $100 here and there. All right. Engaging with chat, because I parasocially love you guys and want to. Sacred Snow says, wait, you're telling me Trump didn't immediately achieve peace in the Middle East version 2? Color me shocked. Yeah, it turns out that just telling people to stop doesn't really work as far as diplomacy goes. Travis Lamb says, I keep thinking they're talking about the marketplace of ideas because of how much I've heard that dumb phrase. Nope, they're talking about the normal market, the economic market. Kevin Scaff says, Pisco is going to say that it's a strict liability crime, so her intent has no bearing on whether or not it's infringement, but it's probably infringement. Right. But at the same time, I think she can use the fair use exemption. If her reaction to the content doubles or triples the runtime and she's making insightful comments, then I think she has a defense. Gen X says, shit, I'm late. Luckily, I saw this mostly. Yeah, Gen X, this is mostly your fault because you were like, oh, man, I'm so torn. I want to see Pisco versus Foolery, but I also like being in Connor's chat. And then now you made me watch this. And so far, I haven't taken that much like psychic damage, but to be honest, it's taking them a little bit to warm up. Benjamin Valamont says 20 likes and 121 watching. Well, we're actually 150 watching, but yes, please like the stream. It is free. Also, feel free to do super chats and all that kind of crap. Cbum says, I adore Pisco, but he was completely off base with a Hassan detainment. It pains me to say as a liberal, but that is genuine TDS. We did break that down the other day, I think, as well. Gen X says, wait, you're saying Israel and Iran have now agreed to be serious about what Trump wants? When? Lol. No idea. No idea, by the way. Love the Warhammer content, by the way, says Vaninda. Thank you, Vaninda. I appreciate you. All right. Continuing with the content.
If I go and steal a lawnmower from your place without permission, without any kind of implied relationship there, anything, right? I just go and steal a lawnmower and
it's still theft.
Or take it and bring it back and use it as though it were my own. Whatever the problem is there, it could be conversion or some other tort. I don't know if you're not maybe trying to permanently deprive you. So whatever the tort is there occurred, regardless of the fact that afterwards you ratified that action. At the time that you're depriving me of possession, or in this case infringing, the infringement occurs. Now, carve out if there's an implied relationship or some kind of license, an implied license, or even an explicit license. That's not what we're talking about. So just number one, overall, XQC is wrong about that. And number two, that doesn't contradict anything I've said or anything anyone's talking about.
Okay, I do think you used that argument a couple of times to say that like a XQC was a greater like a threat to IP, and then that takes me to the last one, which is that he is also a greater threat to people like Sony and Disney stepping in.
Yeah. So let's talk about that real quick. What I said is XQC in the terms of malicious from a legal perspective. I understand that Ethan may be using the term malicious to mean intentional siphoning of his specific work, and so he's using it not as a legal term of art. So, and I've recognized that in my video, and I've recognized this entire time. So there's zero equivocation on my part with the use of that term. I'm conscious of the different, that words can be used in different ways, and I'm conscious of a threat of equivocation. I'm not equivocating. So my point is that XQC legally is malicious in the sense that he has reckless disregard for whether or not he's siphoning this revenue or whatever, right? He doesn't care about the law, but that's not to put him on all fours with Denims and these other people in every respect. I recognize that Denims and these other people probably have a greater, commonplace definition of the term malice. That is to say, they literally want to steal money from Ethan in that respect. And maybe the XQC doesn't have that. I do not dispute that at all. What I'm saying is, he says in his video that he doesn't want to chill XQC, even though XQC is an infringer. Maybe it's a less form of infringement in his opinion because it doesn't include that intentional taking away from his revenue or whatever. But he says he wants to protect the XQCs of the world, these infringers who don't give a fuck if they're siphoning revenue or not. And that, I think, is not consistent with the conduct here or the actual motivation.
I didn't read Ethan Klein's comments that way. I'm not going to lie. I read it a different way, which I'm assuming because you guys have 3,000 IQ. I have 3,000 IQ. What I'm presuming Ethan Klein is saying is that he's not trying to destroy the commentary genre in general. He's trying to elevate what the commentary genre should be. Because right now, sorry, Diet Coke makes me burp. And I'm trying to be very polite to your earballs. So the commentary genre right now does have people like me who talk for 5 minutes at a time, going on geopolitical rants, historical rants, et cetera, et cetera. Steven is very hit or miss, by the way. Sometimes Steven will sit there and he'll just watch 20 minutes worth of content and he'll pause and he'll go, wow, while he's playing his video game. Sometimes Steven will get triggered as fuck and he'll go on like a 5 or 10 minute rant every 2 minutes during a 30-minute segment. And that would be considered good commentary content. So Steven's very hit or miss. But the point is that Pisco's making is that XQC is not known for having fantastic commentary. Neither is Asmongold. However, Asmongold, I think, does go on quite a few rants, especially with the content that I've engaged with. He actually does double or triple the runtime. So the point is that I think that Ethan Klein is not making a specific comment about whether or not XQC is a good commentary creator. I think he's saying that he doesn't want to kill the industry or kill XQC or other bad creators' ability to create content, but he does want to elevate the quality through legal precedent. Christian Blair says, Luke says, at Counterpoints, we're going to need a breakdown of the fire pit discussion over on D's channel. They are in outer space over there. I'm going to need you to be specific. However, yeah, I just added it to my list. So if I can find it and I remember to find it, I'll 100% do it. If anything, what I'm thinking is, obviously I want to grab Republicans by the shoulders and shake them and wake them up, but I'm having difficulty doing that. And so I think another thing I need to do is I need to grab liberals and progressives by the shoulders and I need to shake them and wake them up as well, because some of the shit they say is absurd. Christian Blair says, Straight has already taken over Lycan. She cannot be allowed to take Pisco. DGG alert, issue the fatwa. No. Listen, similar to how people have accused Anissa Joma of Yoko Ono-ing. Yoko Ono is the girl who broke up the Beatles. Similar to how Anissa Joma got accused of breaking up the Beatles, Anissa Joma has been accused of ruining iDubbbz. you have to understand that the men in this scenario have some level of agency. Pisco has a level of agency. If he goes too progressive, we can criticize him for that. If Lycan is going too far progressive, which he has, by the way, we can debate him and all that kind of stuff. And I will. We were on a panel on Friday together. We'll be fighting in the future. I'll put it that way. Val says, I don't care about anyone winning as long as Hassan and his orbiters lose. True. Val, you're just like me, for real, for real. Kevin Scalf says, it's more than just reacting hard enough. It's as a part of the campaign against Ethan, they coordinate with H3 Snark to deny Ethan views. Sure, but coordination is a strong term, right? Coordination implies that Denims is DMing the H3 Snark mods, whereas the H3 Snark mods are, as far as I know, independently said, go watch these creators instead of watching Ethan Klein, right? So I think Ethan Klein can argue damages because he can look at how much revenue all of those creators got, and then he can look at the ones that were effectively a watch party that weren't transformative, and then he can make the argument that effectively, like, these would be views that would go to the original content had they not been siphoned off by H3 Snark. But that's still going to be like a tough argument in court, I think. I think there's like too many layers of extrapolation. iPlatinum sold these, says early stream. Wrong, King. We are live 9:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. I'm live on my home channel on Counterpoints on Tuesdays, but Valor Media Network, VALOR, Media Common Spelling Network Common Spelling, is where I am Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So if you want to come hang out with us 9:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., then that's the place to be. I'm going to read two more and get back into the content. None of your business says, it feels like Pisco has been taking very pro-Hassan takes after the Destiny split, like with immigration stoppage and defending Hassan orbiters. Are my observations just biased? I think a little bit. I think he is leaning a little bit more progressive and lefty these days compared to when he was in Destiny's orbit. However, I don't think that's necessarily like, it's not wrong, and it's not that he's not an agent of his own. He's just a little bit more progressive than we thought, because when he's hanging out with more progressive people, he says more progressive shit. I blame Econo Boy. Snagrid Snow says, this is a good analog to the Middle East. Leftovers podcast was a bad regime, and online left pushing terrible ideas and needed regime change. The regime change failed, and now we're left with a failed warring states that is still ultimately better than the Leftovers regime. Kleinistan is superior to Leftoverstan. That's true. But Hassanistan is worse after the split up. Yeah, this is like Yugoslavia all over again. All right, last one. That was funny. That was good. DL said, they said that that's why I check in with chat, because chat says funny shit. DL says, they said they explicitly wanted to take views away from H3. That's the crux of the entire argument, I believe. Yeah, but you also have to show that there's damages, that they succeeded in siphoning views, and that they created something that wasn't transformative. Because fair use, for instance, if I said, I'm not saying this, but if I said that I wanted to take stuff away from GW 100% could view Games Workshop. They 100% could view that as malicious intent against their IP. However, if I end up promoting their stuff and they become even more successful than usual, and my content is transformative, they might still lose in court. Even if my original goal was to harm their IP, but I helped their IP, that complicates the situation. All right. Anyways, back to the content.
Of what's going on, and especially when he says, I want to prevent Sony and Disney from setting a bad precedent and destroying the reaction community as we know it. They're much more likely to do that, all else equal, towards the bigger reactor. They don't give a fuck about whether you have good intent or bad intent. What they care about is the sort of market substitution effect and how much it's affecting their bottom line, which is going to be largely influenced by the size of the infringer, not their mal motive.
So, okay, so I'll come back to the Sony part then, because I disagree with the part about XQC. I do think that it's maybe just a semantic issue here, but I would say that yes, it's not stealing until the person decides that it's stealing, and that there is a culture online where people, especially smaller creators, would want somebody like XQC to watch their video on his streams, even if he doesn't give them credit, even if he doesn't tag them in it or link them in it, that people are more likely to go look for them, find them, and then subscribe to their channel if they like it. And so there is a culture that is that almost that implied consent. And he's saying if they don't like it, they can go through YouTube and just say, I don't like this, it'll get taken down, that's that, and then we move on. But they decide when it is an infringement, and that 99% of the people don't ever decide that it's an infringement. Therefore, this is the culture of this implied consent already.
So I don't really care about that. He's wrong about that, right? So he's wrong. Like it isn't the fact that it's ever been the case that individuals have to like preemptively give XQC notice that it's not okay for infringement to not occur. So we don't have to take on his weird and distorted view of infringement. I'll give you tons of examples. Example one, where the person has no way of knowing whether XQC is infringing on the content, and it takes months and months for them to even be aware that XQC is infringing.
I didn't finish my workout yesterday, so I'm going to lift while I'm listening. That's how I'm going to transform the content. You're going to see me making weird movements in the background, and it's going to be me lifting weights.
You know, someone who doesn't want this to happen, it doesn't even want to happen the first time, right? And so I just don't accept XQC's framework, and I also don't think it's relevant to what we're talking about here. The question is, what is Ethan's motivation? What is actually motivating Ethan? That's the essence of my critique is the following. Why is Ethan choosing to go after some people and not others? And what I take to be the disingenuous part is he is not going after denims and all to protect the React community. That is not what's happening. And if you don't agree, if you agree with that, then we have no disagreement that I can see.
Okay, so the reason that I was trying to get the XQC part out of the way is because I agree he's not doing that. I also don't think he ever said he was doing that. I don't think that ever happened.
He says it explicitly.
No. All right. So just be clear. We agree he's not doing that. So now the question is, did he put himself out as doing that? And the answer unequivocally to that is yes, he did. Example number one. In his video, how he starts it, he talks generally about the problem of blatant infringement outside the context of intentional siphoning. And this is in the context of this YouTuber that he props up, I forget his name, where he gives that little neat graphic where someone reacts like a lot versus when they don't, and what's the problem, what's not the problem. He calls that situation an injustice. He calls XQC a prime suspect. And then he, about 3 or 4 minutes later, says, I want to get together and get some people behind me to promote a healthy environment. Otherwise, it could destroy the content community, reaction community.
I think he can do both, though. So I think that he can be being vindictive against Denims and Frogan and Casey Tron and all of his critics. I think Ethan Klein can be vindictive against the people that he's suing. I think Casey Tron probably did do the bad reaction. I don't know about Frogan. I don't know about Denim's reaction. It's my understanding that isn't the runtime like an hour and 18 minutes? Isn't Frogan's breakdown like 4 hours? Isn't your runtime, an hour and 18 minutes, and Denim's reaction is like, I don't know, 2 hours or 3 hours? I would assume if that was actually surrounded by insightful commentary, both of those will win on fair use. It's going to be expensive, but it could set the precedent for fair use.
As we know it. He then says that this is done in part to prevent Sony and Disney from setting bad precedent.
Yep.
And specifically that he does not want to chill XQC.
No. I don't think he says specifically, I don't want to chill XQC. Even if he uses XQC as an example, I think the implication is the entire media environment.
So all this taken in totality indisputably suggests that he is painting at least one of his significant motivations.
If I wanted to autistically win this argument, then I could pull up the beginning part of Ethan Klein's video. We could watch it together, and I think I would be able to prove Pisco wrong on this point.
As protecting the commentary community, protecting the React community. Otherwise, why would he bring up Sony and Disney and the notion of setting bad precedent? Why would he talk about the risks to the commentary community as we know it if he weren't trying to appeal to the possibility of an existential threat to that community? Explain that.
So
Okay, so I'm going to pause real quick just to engage with chat. Zero says at Counterpoints, can you bestow your cop knowledge on folks and explain to everyone why Ethan wasn't entrapment? Number one, I think entrapment is like a criminal legal term. Like, I don't think it's civil. I don't know if you can civilly entrap someone. Entrapment definition: the state being caught in or as in a trap. Entrapment legal definition. Let's take a look. U.S. In the United States, entrapment is a legal defense where a defendant claims they were induced by law enforcement to commit a crime, not a civil infraction, they were not already predisposed to commit. Essentially, if law enforcement officers or their agents pressure or persuade someone into committing a crime they wouldn't have otherwise committed, entrapment may be a valid defense. And so here's the thing. Ethan Klein already preempts this line of argumentation within his little 20-minute video, because he says, like, I didn't want these people to steal my content. I just knew that they probably would. And so it's like leaving, like a trap bike or a trap car out there. No one's compelling you to steal a car. Nobody's compelling you to steal a bike. You're walking up and you're taking somebody else's property, knowing that it's not your property. That's not entrapment. Whereas if a cop is like, hey, man, you should go steal that bike. Doesn't that bike look really good? I bet you could pawn that. I bet you could sell that for like $500. I bet you could pay your bills with that. Then at that point, they're inducing you to commit a crime that you otherwise would not be committing. So that would be the difference. Is number one, criminal versus civil. Number two, Ethan Klein is not law enforcement. Number three, he didn't get them to commit crimes that they otherwise would not have committed. He got them to commit civil infractions that they already routinely do. So that's why it's not entrapment. Thank you for the good question, Zero. Grassroots says gifted 10 Counterpoints memberships. Thank you, Grassroots. You are an absolute king. Thank you for being so kind to the channel. Basically, to you guys, just quick shill time. Like the stream, share it with your friends, engage in chat. There's lots of cool, funny, interesting people in there. Watch the VODs. Join us over at Valor Media Network Wednesday through Friday so we can all hang out together and have a good time every day.
I think these are separate statements. I think in one statement, he is saying he personally does not want the outcome of his lawsuit to chill the React community. He is somebody who reacts to videos as well. He wouldn't want to hurt himself in this way either. But also, as a separate statement, because these statements are separated, then he also says that he has a fear that
Tagarung says Connor doesn't love us. How could he? He doesn't know us. I'm getting to know you, Tagarung.
Sony and Disney could eventually come after people if this is like a slippery slope to where people are just kind of recklessly and maliciously replacing things in the market.
Wait a second. So I want to just, this is the quote. Though theoretically I could sue a lot more creators and rake in millions of dollars. So just to be clear, that is him suggesting that other creators are infringing, right? Not that they're doing fair use, because he couldn't rake in millions if they weren't infringing, right? So we're only talking about infringement here, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So he says the following: though theoretically I could sue a lot more creators and rake in millions of dollars, but the purpose of this is not financial gain. People like XQC and Asmongold may have watched the entire thing, but I would never sue them just for doing that. I don't want to chill the reaction community into fear, actually. The opposite. I hope
he hoisted by his own petard. He even just admitted it. He's not referring to XQC specifically. He said the reaction community in general. Get owned, Pisco.
That we can all unite against this type of egregious behavior that not only makes us all look bad, but could destroy the commentary community as we know it. That is.
And what's the bad behavior? The bad behavior is having the stated intent of stealing somebody else's property because you won't get called out on it. That's the behavior he wants to chill. Frogan, Caseytron, and Denims all stated that they had the intent to steal.
Is a savior rationale. It's saying everyone, including, we need to bandy together to protect the XQCs of the world and the Asmongold's of the world.
Nope, that's an inference. That's 100% an inference.
Otherwise, we'll all look bad, and it could destroy the commentary community as we know it. That's a broader narrative, that this type of egregious behavior.
And in my opinion, a incorrect inference. Don't worry, Sasha. I'll address your comment momentarily because I think it's pertinent.
If we don't band together, right? If we don't all band together to unite, it could destroy our community. Isn't that, and I'll just very simple, isn't that a savior rationale that speaks to him trying to achieve broader protection of the community?
Yeah, because he's trying to eliminate the malintent that's being stated by these three creators, which effectively is that their intent is to knowingly steal. That's what he's trying to fight.
I guess in a sense, I think he's just asking for like some consistent rationale between everybody to where they're all going to agree. This is bad. This is good. I'm on y'all's side. I don't want to chill all reaction content, but there is a type of reaction content that we should all agree crosses the line.
And I think the crossing the line is having the stated intent to steal. Now, I think further, we can say that reaction content that is not transformative, where there is no commentary, where you sit there smoking pot, where you sit there eating food, where you don't say anything every few minutes, where you don't have any commentary or any insight, and you just go, oh, wow, I'm so confused right now. That's bad react content. It's not fair use, or it shouldn't be.
And I think he's more so arguing in favor of himself. So, because currently there are tons of people in the reaction community. Hold on, let me finish this. Because people in the reaction community are currently going after him, saying that he is chilling the reaction community and he's ruining it. And I think he's trying.
I don't think he's ruining it at all, by the way.
Trying to like prevent that ahead of time and try to make sure that they don't come after him and think that he's trying to stop all of this.
Okay, so let's take it
Turns out I'm with Tom here.
step by step. Does Ethan agree that there's an existential risk to the commentary community?
Yes.
I with the Sony and like Disney thing, I think that he thinks there's a slippery slope where this can get out of hand. But
but he says that this type of behavior, that is to say, the denim style behavior, that this type of behavior could destroy the commentary community.
Yes, and the way that it would destroy it is, let's say that Denims watches all of Star Wars uninterrupted with minimal commentary, and she effectively does watch parties on Twitch. Disney could get pissed off. They could sue her for copyright infringement, and then the precedent could be set that unless you have explicit consent from the original copyright holder, then you are not allowed to engage with any kind of React content whatsoever. And so as a result, through that legal precedent, everybody is shut down from engaging with any other media besides media that is already on YouTube from other creators. And so you've effectively wiped out an entire genre of commentary. That is the concern.
As we know it.
mm-hmm.
So I'm asking you very directly, based on that statement, is Ethan describing a type of existential risk?
Yes.
To the commentary community?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So he is partly painting his lawsuit in terms of protecting against an existential risk against the commentary community, correct?
Yes.
His lawsuit, sure. I think it's more so.
Dude, all right. So, Tom, I'm just giving you advice. You don't have to take it, okay? Pisco likes, lots of people in Twitch and YouTube politics like to do logic traps where they build you into saying yes multiple times. So then when they ask a presumptive statement that is like a logical leap between the things that you've agreed to and the things that you should agree to after you've already agreed to 3 or 4 things, just because you say yes to 2 or 3 descriptive statements doesn't mean you have to sign on to the final statement. And so what I find is instinctively a lot of debaters, they don't want to concede the first 2 or 3 descriptive statements because they're worried that they're getting thrown into a trap. But I'm just telling you, bite the bullet. It's fine. It's just word games from rhetorical gladiators. Just say, yes, it's an existential threat. Yes, Ethan Klein is painting himself as a savior. Yes, he probably is being vindictive against these other creators. That doesn't mean he's wrong.
Their behavior is the existential threat. But yeah, it's their behavior is the existential threat.
Yeah. So their behavior is the type of egregious behavior that, quote, not only makes us all look bad, but could destroy the commentary community.
Yes, saying that you're going to steal other people's content willingly is 100% bad behavior that could damage the commentary community if a large media conglomerate sues these kinds of creators and sets bad precedent. Totally descriptively accurate.
And so and I just want to get a very clear yes or no. He is saying that his lawsuit is done, at least in part, to prevent this kind of egregious behavior that, quote, could destroy the commentary community as we know it. Correct?
Yes.
No, I don't know where you're getting.
Come on, Tom!
Like, again, like
how not?
Because I think he's just asking again. I think he's just asking for everybody to be consistent on this and not blame him as though he is chilling the commentary community. But he's saying for me and for other people who have this violation against them, they would want to act on this and sue people who violate their content in this way.
Because and that's why he wants us all to unite, right? He's saying unite. He's saying unite. We should all be on the same page here.
Yeah.
Because when we go after these people, it's going to prevent the destruction of the commentary community, right? That's why he's saying we can all unite against this type of egregious behavior.
Yes, the egregious behavior being that you're stating that you're going to steal stuff. I've already repeated myself 2 or 3 times, and Pisco's just trying to get the W, and Tom's just slipping out at the last second. Going back to chat, because frankly, you guys all have 3,000 IQ. You're well endowed. You're beautiful. Like the stream, et cetera, et cetera. Sasha Lynn says, she stated that she was doing it to steal views from Ethan, which shows she wasn't doing it to make her own content. Sasha Lynn, I agree with you descriptively, and I think that Ethan Klein stated as much as this is the behavior that he wants to eliminate. However, if she did make her own content, I think that's going to be a viable defense. So for instance, well, I mean, I don't even think I have to give that much of an example. Realistically, fair use is fair use. So even if I say, my goal is to steal this content, but then I end up creating a beautiful commentary that's insightful and intelligent and long-winded and its own art form. Well, I didn't really steal your shit, did I? I used your shit as inspiration in order to make my shit. You know what I'm saying? Which I think is going to be a viable defense. Christian Blair says, would be based to live stream at least one lawsuit between streamers in court. I don't know. I find legal shit pretty dry. Like even this, I'm finding a little bit dry. I'm just Pisco is heated enough, and Tom is foolery enough to make it entertaining. Razzle says, I think I kind of agree with Pisco here that the core of the case seems pretty solid, but the complaint is written poorly and kind of unhinged. And I say that as someone who hates denims. Well, yeah. For instance, like the lawyer uses the word obliterated. You know, that was one of the weirdest things about the court documents. It's like, creator Casey Tron is so obliterated that she doesn't even know how to use, whatever. Denim said that there was last night I was watching some Nick Diorio. Denim said that she believes there's a non-zero chance that Ethan Klein wrote parts of the complaint. And Nick Diorio said that was the stupidest thing he ever heard. The reason why it's stupid is because Ethan Klein can obviously afford a lawyer. However, it is weird that a lawyer would use the term obliterated in legal documents. That is a crazy phrase to use. DL says, I think most people would read it that way. Interesting. Afak said, and the general opinion of whether or not XQC is transformative or not is very decisive. I don't like how confident Pisco is about XQC clearly being in the wrong. Well, right. And in order to determine that for my own opinion, I would have to watch XQC content and see if he paused every 3 to 5 minutes and actually commented 1 to 2 minutes of stuff and then doubled or tripled the runtime. I think that if you double or triple the runtime with your own commentary, you're probably fine. Fucking Cam, I think that's his name, says, I think it's that these 3 people specifically said to watch through them to not give Ethan views. Yeah, that's the crux of it, 100%. Brandon Cook says, Pisco even goes on to say that the reason for suing doesn't matter and that Ethan is well within his rights to sue whoever. This is pedantry at its finest. Agree. I don't know if you're saying that Tom is being a pedant or if Pisco is being a pedant, but I do agree that ultimately these guys are quibbling over like minutia in these concepts. Conservative liberalism says don't lump liberals in with obstinate conservatives. Okay. Sasha Lynn says fire pit argument is Dan's rich, so any backyard man-made fire pit doesn't count. Fire pit argument is Dan is rich, so any backyard man-made fire pit doesn't count. I need to know what the fuck that sentence means. Gen X says, oh my God, Straighterade is Yoko. You guys are so mean. Affect says, Lycan is fucking insane right now, though, right? Maybe we don't apply it to only Straighterade. Okay, good to know. Lycan is as R-slurred. No, okay. Lycan to me, listen, I like Lycan. I think he's a good-looking dude. I'm happy that he can cook food, and him and Aaron have been together for a long time. Whatever's going on, I'm happy that they're happy, right? However, I do think that in our argument on Friday, I effectively described him as viewing... I am biased. I am pro-American. I like the United States government. I dislike Islamism. I dislike communism. I dislike fascism. So I am biased towards the United States of America. I think that Lycan has some kind of like weird sense of neutrality. He might even prefer socialism in its ideological form. And so as a result, he's willing to be more critical and more hostile to the United States as if it was the same level of bad actor as Islamism or authoritarian communism. And we're just not on the same page on that line of argumentation. Andrew says, I agree with the lawsuits, but can we stop pretending Ethan's lawsuit has anything to do with a noble desire to elevate content? He hates us on orbiters, and that's why it's happening. Why can't it be both, right? This is something that's frustrating for me, and it's not anything big. But why can't a 19-year-old, when they enlist in the military, a lot of people are like, oh, it's to escape poverty. They don't have any patriotism. They don't care about this country. It's just so they can escape the working class and they can get benefits. And then other people will be like, oh, it's just so he can get, he can have a steady income so he can buy a Dodge Charger, right? But you know what happened when I went in the military? There were people who were escaping poverty, who wanted to buy a Dodge Charger, who were also patriots who wanted to fight for their country. Why can't it be all four motivations? And depending on the day, why can't they vacillate between which motivation is animating them? Same thing with Ethan Klein. How is it a binary between being a shitter that wants to attack Hassan and his orbit versus elevating commentary? I mean, dude, you have to bear in mind, he spent a decade being a React Andy commentator. Why wouldn't he be passionate about the industry? So couldn't Ethan Klein be, I would say, 70% wanting to take a punch at the Hassan orbit, but then 30% he actually does want to elevate the commentary community because he feels like it's fallen off since he stopped creating that style of content? I think it could be both.
He wouldn't be saying that if it were just limited to himself and trying to reassure people. He's not just trying to, wait, Tom, you agree with this? He's not just trying to, as you're trying to paint it, reassure people that his specific lawsuit isn't going to chill the community. He's actually doing something broader and saying there's a bigger risk here and we all need to unite against this type of behavior to prevent the destruction of the community. Not just my lawsuit, right? It's his lawsuit is part of a culture that he's trying to promote against this type of egregious behavior for the purpose of preventing the destruction of the commentary community as we know it.
Yes,
Agree?
that is what I'm saying. Yes.
Okay.
That is what I'm saying. I'm saying, but that is very different than he is the savior, but more so that there is a consistent line that we should all agree on. That's totally different than I'm here to save you, but instead we all agree on this, right? This is a line they did cross it, right?
And the line that they're crossing is saying that they're stealing IP. I've already said this half a dozen times. We got it. Let's go.
He is trying to portray his lawsuit as protecting the commentary community, isn't he?
And problem question mark?
No, I think it's him saying that all people
Yes, absolutely. Pisco. Yes, you are correct.
Should agree that they would sue.
I'm going to lift weights because these hoes are disappointing me.
Over something like this, and that like this isn't something that is supposed to go after a broad array of people. It is going after specific people who do this specifically, not all commentary people.
No, I understand the target here, right? That he's trying to portray is a more narrow target. I'm not disputing you that his target is, as he portrays it, is more narrow. All I'm saying, Tom, is he is portraying his lawsuit as a reaction, a justified reaction that's justified in part by protecting the commentary community. That is to say, people in general need to unite against this style of behavior, this type of egregious behavior, for the purpose of making us not all look bad and making it so that the commentary community is not destroyed. So he's trying to say that this lawsuit is the opposite of trying to chill. This is what he says, right? I'm not trying to chill the reaction community into fear. The opposite. I'm trying to do the opposite. What's the opposite of trying to chill the reaction community?
He's trying to revivify it.
It's to promote the reaction community, right? Correct?
Yeah, well, he's saying he's part of that community, yeah.
What? That's a non sequitur, Tom.
He's saying, I'm not trying to chill them. I'm trying to do the opposite, which is another way of protecting the community. He's trying to portray his lawsuit as not just vindicating his own rights, but as protecting the commentary community. Agreed?
I guess, again, I wouldn't say it that way. I think that is an odd way to say it, because again, it's like me. Okay, I do React content. Okay, I do
Tom, is this going to be relevant to the question being asked?
a lot of, like, about, I would say maybe half of my content is React content, and I am also going to sue people who are just stealing my content, just re-uploading it, putting about 3 minutes of commentary in there with an hour and a half of my fucking content just re-uploaded, right? And I would say,
like Rao Kittenhouse, lol. Listen, I know that feels like a shot at Rao Kittenhouse, but what Rao Kittenhouse actually does, I'm assuming with JStock's permission, is JStock, for whatever reason, I don't know why he was banned off of YouTube, but it didn't seem like he was being that egregious. But JStock was banned off of YouTube, and I think it was relegated to Kick. And so as a result, Rao Kittenhouse has become effectively like a VOD service for JStock, where if there's a drama between Kelly Jean or Sherry or JStock or Queeman or whatever, then they'll take the entire VOD and they'll just do like a 2-minute intro and a 2-minute outro, and then they'll re-upload it to YouTube. Now, if they have JStock's permission, then that's fine. Like they can do that because they have copyright permission from the copyright owner. However, if Rao Kittenhouse was doing that in order to steal from JStock, then that would be obvious copyright infringement because he's not transforming the content in any way.
make the same arguments, just saying, like, yeah, this is something that like hurts all of us when people go past this line and start this process where we're having to like sue each other to take this down.
Right. And if you sue Tom, and you said this is about preventing the existential threat to our community, and you would defend yourself, you say, I'm not trying to harm the commentary community. The opposite. I'm trying to protect us because this makes us all look bad. And so when I sue these people, it's to vindicate my rights, but it's also to protect the community. That's what he's doing here. And that's why, by the way, he starts with this broader concern from creators and saying this is about, this is an injustice every time it happens, with reference to that content creator, whoever he was. What he's trying to do is he's trying to make the argument that his lawsuit is doing the opposite of chilling, that it's actually protecting. It's protecting the commentary community. And that is why he says we all need to unite. He's trying to portray, and I think if dispute this.
I'm going to give them one more loop on this. If they loop on it again, I'm going to fast forward.
I don't know. I don't know if you.
I agree. Okay, again, I can agree that in a sense it is protecting in the fact that it is drawing the line that he thinks should be there. I don't think that makes him the hero, but more so that a line being there is what protects us. That line is the thing that we should all agree on, because it will protect us from disappearing.
Right. And what I'm doing right now is helping promote that line.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what he's saying. Yes. So that's what I take to be the savior rationale.
Okay.
This lawsuit is about protecting the commentary community by enforcing a standard on the commentary community. Agreed?
Okay, yeah. If you put it that way, sure.
Holy shit, took us a while to get there. I'm going to fast forward another 30 seconds so we can move to the next point, hopefully.
Justified in part by protecting the React community.
Okay, we've heard that line of argumentation.
Is consistent throughout, right? There's an existential threat.
Okay, we heard that talking point. Let's see. I'm literally going to keep fast forwarding until we hear new words.
Doing these sorts of things, then we're able to kind of save ourselves in this way.
Okay, heard that. Holy shit, guys.
If you scroll back 10 minutes ago, you said he never said that. Of course he's not doing that. He never said it.
No.
Now you're saying he did say it.
No. Just a minute ago, we agreed that he is talking about the line that he is protecting.
Heard that one before. At this point, how many times do you think I'm going to have to fast forward? I've already had to fast forward 5 times. Okay, maybe 3. I think it's 4. But let's go ahead and count. Let's go ahead and count that I've done 4, and let's see how many times I have to fast forward until they finally move to a new line of argumentation.
By starting a trend or by being the thing itself of preventing the destruction of the commentary community.
Heard that one.
He's talking about a line.
So we're up to 5 fast forwards.
So but that line is just
Heard that one. So we're up to 6.
on that. We agree that the complaint is dog shit, and you agree that one of his rationales was to defend their commentary community, and that's bullshit. And so what do we disagree about?
Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to read chat real quick, and then I'm going to address I'll address what Pisco just said. Looks like we finally hit something new.
You agree with me on that? We agree that the complaint is dog shit, and
I'll agree that the complaint is dog shit because they use unprofessional language, and on top of that, they're already hitting people who might be able to defend themselves via fair use. And just because they have explicitly stated that their goal is to hurt the original content by siphoning views off of it is not going to demonstrate that they actually succeeded in siphoning views off of it, particularly if their content is transformative. I think Caseytron is more vulnerable than Denims and Frogan at this point. And then hold on, there's a second point here.
You agree that one of his rationales was to defend their commentary community, and that's bullshit. And so
I don't agree that that's bullshit. I think people can have multiple motivations all at the same time. Anyways, let's go to chat because you guys are smarter and more entertaining. John Kennedy says, Counterpoints, is the New York lawyer going to be just focusing on Ethan applying this lawsuit unfairly, or is he going to, in a lawsuit, has merit? It seems like he's saying that the lawsuit might have merit, but it's poorly constructed. If I was to steel man what I've heard so far, it might have merit, but it's poorly constructed. That's answering the first part. And then the second part is he's saying that the motivations are bullshit, but I don't think the motivations necessarily matter. Luke says, Counterpoint says the fire pit is the first 30 minutes of the latest Anything Else podcast. Yeah, if Dan's being an obnoxious rich person in the first 30 minutes of the Anything Else podcast, I will go criticize him and make fun of him because that could be fun. Genex says Aaron is going to ditch Lycan and Pisco is going to ditch Joe. I am telling you, Aaron and Pisco are going to end up together. I don't think so. I think there's this could be, somebody might have just told me a joke and maybe I took it seriously. I think there's some flexibility in these relationships that might allow people to smoochy kiss and not have it implode the relationships. That could have been a joke. I have no idea whether or not it's a joke. And then, is Pisco dating Joe the Silly Serious, or is it a different Joe? Christian Blair says, Fung Dark says, where was the panel with you and Lycan? It was on Wick TV. Christian Blair says, despite Connor assuming Pisco is gay, he has been in a relationship for quite a while. Good for him. Razzle Smasher says, Lonerbox has a respectable take. He said that the reacts were indeed stolen content, but that he tries to do it ethically, and if the rules change, he'll just do something else based and reasonable, in my opinion. Yeah, but at the same time, I think Lonerbox doesn't understand fair use, and then he's also a Brit bonger. I think that Scotland / the United Kingdom have more strict rules when it comes to intellectual property. I think the United States is way more flexible. Sasha Lynn says those 3 people are being sued because they stated on stream that they were doing is taking views from Ethan. Sure, but did they succeed? The Weird World of Guy says, do you do Eurostream times usually? I do 9:30 EST to 2:30 p.m. EST. That's my general schedule. Yep. Matt Frosty says, good morning, Connor and chat. Good morning to you, Matt Frosty. Good to see you. Miss Weasel says, Pisco is more progressive on his own, but is also dating Blonde Politics, who is way more left. Is that a rebrand of Joe, or is that somebody else? Brandon Cook says, I hope that when the lawsuit passes, Destiny and Pisco can rebuild the bridge so that they can fight again. Pisco needs to be moderated a bit more. Sure, I agree. But I think that Destiny needs to pass his lawsuit with flying colors. Effectively, it probably needs to be dismissed wholeheartedly. I think if he has a damaging lawsuit that goes on for a protracted time and it continues to hurt his public reputation, that kind of decreases their ability to reconcile. Also, I think that their reconciliation will be hostile, where effectively the only time that they're going to create content together is when they have contrarian views that they can fight over. I don't think they're going to be able to be friendly collaborators in the future. That's my opinion based off of how harshly Pisco separated in the first days of the drama. Kingslayer says, what panel were you on Friday? Wick TV. I'll post it as a VOD. Affect says, also my understanding is that XQC does shit like linking videos and he does small actions to spread the videos around. Based. Sasha Lynn says, fair use is an extension from copyright, so my guess is that the intent behind why they made the video will outweigh what is a fair use. I don't think so. Don't in civil suits, I think you have to prove damages. I'll read another couple, and then we'll get back to it. Sasha Lynn says, lift harder, streamer man. True. Mr. Meach says, howdy, Counterpoints. I'm a lib who started watching recently, hoping your slightly more sensible right-wing takes on help me better understand and relate to my brain-dead libertarian brother. Well, I hate libertarians too, so I'll be able to explain his worldview while also still hating it. Jonah Boy says, the only stream where you get politics and lifting. True. You guys need to get your own weights and start lifting at home. MT says, I think Pisco forgets is Ethan explicitly states the malicious part, not just general infringement, and he doesn't want that part to ever become commonplace. Yep. Again, we talked about the line like 10 times. Rises with the super chat. Thank you kindly, King. Rises says, not going to lie, Pisco's disagreement is so pointless on the grand scheme of things. It's like the defense spending hours bitching about how the prosecutor's tie is ugly. Yeah, kind of. So let's see if they get into any more substantive meat. I'm going to give them a little bit more time to give us some content. And then probably around the 2-hour mark of the stream, I'll shift gears if we don't make any new ground.
What do we disagree about?
Well, I don't know. You just said it's bullshit again. I would say that my lawsuit would also do the same thing, is like setting the standard that like people are going too far, and that by suing, I am also taking part in setting the standards to where like things don't go too far and don't go down the slippery slope.
But what's the too far? In this case, Ethan Klein has stated repeatedly that the too far is somebody stating that they have the intent to steal and then stealing. That's where he said that it went too far. So what would be your too far, Tom?
To where it is the same exact thing.
I'm going to lift, because if I keep thinking about how these guys are circling, it's just going to piss me off. So Gen X, I blame you.
That you're claiming he's saying.
Do you actually
but I would say that, yes, that is a very real
them
thing. Yes, that is a very real thing. Yeah.
So you actually now believe that one of them was motivating Ethan is to protect against Disney and Sony's of the world by enforcing a standard. Do you think that's one of his rationales?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah. Like, his rationale. No, sorry. No, his rationale. No. Is that what he's arguing? That yes. But is that his rationale? No, he's finding a rationale that lets him go after the people that he wants to go after. Well, almost definitely.
Boom.
Yeah.
Boom. That's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is this is not what's actually motivating him. What's motivating him is going after the people he wants to go after.
My argument is it could be both.
Not this feeling that he needs to protect.
Somebody who enlists in the military can want a Dodge Charger. They can want a steady job that allows them to move into the middle class. And they can want to be a patriot who goes and kills people in the Middle East and North Africa so the United States has access to oil. All 3 of those or 4 of those can be true at the same time.
The commentary community. But even though he says that, right? He says he's trying to protect the commentary community, but what's really motivating him, and it's fine. You go after people you don't like in lawsuits who are infringing your shit. Yeah. But don't sell me this bullshit that what you're doing is defending the commentary community, because that's clearly what you're not doing. And that's not what's motivating you.
Sure, but I also think that like anything that's past that line is where we would all agree. Whereas like it is common that you can find people who are reacting, but they're not doing it maliciously. They're not trying to like steal your stuff. They're not trying to replace you in the market. They're not trying to just like sit there and have a watch party. That like if they are trying, most of us would like call somebody out for suing people unnecessarily and kind of that would chill the commentary community. We would call that sort of behavior out. And so I think
would we? But this is Tom, what I take to be the essence here, right? Because the problem is what XQC is doing is wrong.
Sure.
And Ethan's been on record.
Okay,
saying
I
it's
shouldn't say
wrong.
wait. I shouldn't say wait.
And
Commentary community would. The commentary community would. I wouldn't. I think that yes, you review somebody's stuff, you are always at risk. Always, always, always. You are always at risk.
And XQC and Ethan has been vociferous in criticizing not just the people where their stated intent is to siphon money. He's been saying that what XQC does is unjustifiable, and XQC has these arguments, these bizarre arguments about how it helps them, actually, the infringer. And like you said at the start, right, that what he's doing really is trying to promote their stream, or that it should be the default is you have to do a takedown before it's infringement or whatever. And so Ethan needs to.
We could just accept a line of argumentation that is actually wildly simplistic. XQC is a fucking idiot. That's that's like another line of argumentation we could just accept, is XQC doesn't know his asshole from a hole in the ground and doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. All right, I'm gonna go to chat because frankly, you guys are more entertaining. Seashell Hunter says, when did Pisco glue his lips to Hassan's butthole? You said ring, but I'm assuming you mean butthole. What the hell? I don't think Pisco's done that. I think you guys are too harsh. I think you're judging him too harshly. Listen, I get we have a lot of DGG crossover right now. You know, I parasocially love each and every one of you. We peaked out as a channel organically between like 70 and 100 viewers. And then I did one stream with Destiny arguing about Men in Black, and we jumped up to like 200. And now we're stabilizing between 150 and 170, which is dope. I love you guys for being here. Thank you for watching the content. I hope I can entertain you while you're waiting for your other favorite streamers to go live. And I hope eventually to become your favorite streamer as well. However, that being said, orbiters are always typically judged with like whether or not they have a good relationship with Steven, whereas the truth is that they are independent people. And so I think people are robbing Pisco of his own agency by saying like, oh, wow, he does sound like crazy progressive now. He's hanging out with Lycan too much. He's hanging out with, Straight Array too much. He's trying to suck up to the Hassan industrial complex. And it could just be that Pisco has always been fairly progressive, but he just looked like a liberal because he was always, fighting with Daddy Destiny about minutia in liberal policy, or he was fighting with Destiny against like crazy socialists and communists and fighting against far right freaks. So, I think that like half of this could be Pisco maybe have gotten a little bit more lefty or progressive within the past year, and half of it could just be your perceptions updating with who he actually is. Sacred Snow says, it looks like I have a long day of reaching out to clients ahead, so I'll just be lurking in the stream and I'll watch the VOD tomorrow or Thursday. Everyone have a great day. Well, Sacred Snow, I'm sorry that you have a busy day ahead of you, but I appreciate you hanging out in chat and always appreciate your viewership, comments, and super chats because you are very generous as well. Christian Blair says, Pisco is Lorian lol. He 100% would have the opinion if he was still talking to Destiny and the content would be fire. Dang, y'all are fucking Pisco haters. Like, bear in mind, I'm a Pisco hater. Like, Pisco and I, like, we're oil and water, man. We're cats and dogs. We fight about everything. We got like the little brother, big brother dynamic. So I'm not trying to like simp for Pisco, but this is like I'm the middle brother and Pisco's my little brother. And you guys are just beating up on my little brother. And it's like, yeah, I hate my little brother. I want to kick the shit out of my little brother, but he's my little brother. Sasha Lynn says, how did Pisco and J-Stock have the exact same weird position word for word? Because J-Stock watched Pisco. Lol. Boom. Suck it. Silver Jacket Man says, you can civilly entrap someone in your basement. True. You wouldn't download a car. You wouldn't download a bike. I mean, I absolutely would. Gen X says sweaty points. Well, the good news is I got the air conditioning. My lights blocked out. I'm actually doing pretty good over here. It's nice and chill. Silver Jacket Man says, did I say victim? I meant visitor. True. Skill Fava says, hey, I loved your debate on Men in Black with Destiny. So I'm going to throw this your guys' way. Steven. Okay, so we went on the bro venture. Okay, then we were hanging out. I don't know how much I'm supposed to share about Sam Bino, but as far as I understand, Sam is a girl who works for Steven and helps coordinate the events and all that kind of stuff. And she was also the videographer that day. And so she's like helping to coordinate stuff with Steven because Steven's doing a lot of shit. And so I said, I had a lot of fun. So I was like, if you want to do that once a quarter, if you want to do that once a month, I would love to do that. That would be such a blast to go on a bro venture and then do a podcast stuff. And Sam was like, okay, yeah, Steven thinks that's a good idea. But I don't want to insist upon myself where I'm like, let's hang out, right? Like I want it to be organic. But what I was thinking would be fun for like a next bro date is, number one, obviously I think we should go to a Warhammer store at some point, because I think him just like looking at the models, looking at how they're painted, all that kind of stuff. Is he going to think that it's cringe and gay and he's just going to ignore Warhammer for the rest of his life? Probably. But is there a 10% chance that he could see the artistry that's done in painting models, and he could see the artistry that's done in manufacturing the models, and he could fall in love with it? There's a 10% chance that could happen. And then also the gaming is incredibly complex. Like the tournament scene is incredibly complex. So if Steven needs something wholesome to wrap his ADD brain around, that is expensive and fun and complex, but also brings like a lot of social benefits, I think Warhammer could be perfect for him. So I would love to do that as a bro venture. Then the other thing that I would like to do too is, I hated his Men in Black take so much that I think that if we went to go see a movie, let's say like the new Aliens movie was out. I forget what the new Aliens Romulus, obviously that's a few months old at this point. But let's say that we went to go see Aliens Romulus, and then we did like the same thing where we sat down, like 1 hour was alt media politics and drama, and 1 hour was like a media breakdown. I think that would be really fun because, once again, he likes to think that he's the smartest thing since sliced bread. He's the coolest thing since Johnny Bravo. But I thought his MIB takes were dog shit. So if we wanted to fight about new movies or old movies, I think that'd be fun as fuck. So anyways, I'm looking forward to chat's response to that line of commentary. Andrew says, unironically, Connor's best debate performance, laughed my ass off. He cooked. True. Gen X says he's dissecting Ethan's words as if Ethan is a lawyer and means everything he said literally and legally. Lol, you can't do that. Agreed. Silver Jacket Man became a member. Thank you, King. Always appreciate that. Sasha Lynn says, yo, it seems coordinated, if anything. Well, Sasha Lynn, I talked to Steven because you and I have talked offline about people gutting for Steven or whatever. Steven doesn't feel that way. I'm just telling you. He just doesn't think it goes that deep. Christian Blair says, good debate, but Connor is wrong on MIB. Besides, everybody knows his best debate was his tag team with Lauren Southern versus Surfs and Twin Rabbits. Listen, I'm a fairly boring creator compared to a lot of people, but let's be real. Lauren Southern and Surfs versus Tale of Twin Rabbits will go down in debate history, and then also MIB debate will go down in debate history. Those were both fire. Anyways, I want to engage with chat a little bit, but I also want to get back to it. Last one. Mr. Universe says, they said that about ad thing, and now people making millions and millions more of you on YouTube. Yeah, if you're talking about the adpocalypse, yeah, absolutely. All right. Anyways.
Invent this rationale, because he's oftentimes been, I think, rightly attacking people like XQC for doing the non-malicious infringement, right? For doing the kind of infringement where he's actually trying to justify and say, I'm not being malicious in the sense of siphoning things intentionally. And so he needs to twist himself into knots in trying to maintain a consistent position of attacking XQC in the past, but not trying to chill XQC in the present. And so it's this tortured rationale, because the truth is what you just said, Tom.
Yeah.
The truth is it would be deeply unpopular if you were to sue XQC. But that would be consistent with his past position, which is that even the unintentional siphoning, or the siphoning where their goal is actually to promote, if it's infringement, but it's promoting the other stream, that is bad by itself. That's why he's choosing to go after these people, and why he has to knot himself into pretzels, is because he knows suing XQC would be unpopular, condemning XQC would be unpopular, which is why he says he doesn't want to chill XQC, and he doesn't care to sue XQC. Why? Because he doesn't have a vendetta against XQC. And it's fine if you have a vendetta against these people, and that's why you want to sue them, but then just admit it.
People can have multiple motivations at one time. I've already said this multiple times. So no, Pisco, wrong.
Yeah, sure. I mean, as long as you're saying that, like, yes, he's saying that, like, there's this line, and that this line is what distinguishes him from the other people, but that's what you mean when you say he's the hero, fine. I don't have a problem with that. That is not what I took it as. It is not what a lot of people I know heard you say it took it as, but that yes, that is what I'm saying. That is what I agree on, and the fact that yes, he is definitely doing this because he just doesn't like them, and that this is the rationale that like furthers that. But more so, this distinguishes him from coming after a commentary overall versus like just people who are a little bit more malicious.
But it's ad hoc, right? It's post hoc,
Right,
and it's
correct.
and it's not what he was thinking.
Guys, little news comment. Donald Trump is just tweeting at Israel. He's just like Iran and Israel, after the ceasefire allegedly went into effect, Iran launched a few more missiles and a few more drones, and Israel launched a few more like bombing sorties. And Donald Trump is just tweeting at them. And he's like, no, stop, turn around. Like, what is happening, man? Why is this a thing? Why do we have an old senile president just yelling at nation states on Twitter? That's not how you do diplomacy, Donald. What the hell?
Before he did all this,
but do you think he would do it? Do you think he would do it if they because I think I think it's both. I think it's that he doesn't like them, and because they were overly malicious in the way they did it.
True. Thank you, Tom. You're saying my point.
This now gives him the ability, but it is both, that it has to if it was something that was broad sweeping, if they didn't say the malicious things, he would have gone after them anyways.
Question, right? Yeah, you're asking me that question. My answer is yes, he would have still sued them. Now I'm going to ask it to you. If Denims had done the exact same infringing reactions, and these other people, exact same infringing reactions, but had just said like, fuck Ethan, instead of saying, I want to take money away from him, and you didn't have all that stuff about the snark, that is to say, he set a trap, right? And let's imagine that there was no Reddit post. It's just as infringing of reaction.
Another news break. Steven blocked Nathan. Now, in Steven's defense, Nathan hit him with like a bunch of like Groiper talking points. And so, I could find that annoying. Also, even as a father, like I wouldn't want my kids to be looking at all of my shit on Twitter. And it's not because like I do anything particularly nefarious on Twitter, but I want to be able to say crazy shit. You know what I'm saying? So good move, Steve.
Reactions, but you don't have the admissions. Do you think he would have gone after them?
I don't know. Maybe I would have, but
I think he would have gone after Casey Tron.
I don't know if he would have. I don't know.
He would have. What he was doing was he was setting a trap. He couldn't have known in advance that they were going to make admissions, Tom. So when he was planning this all out, it wasn't with the notion that we were going to.
Yeah, it was probably with the notion that they were going to have a lazy, shitty react and that he would sue the people with the lazy, shitty react. That's what's going on, Pisco.
Have these, damning admissions. He was trying to set a trap because of the infringement, and for you to buy that. Oh, if I'll give you the final example. Let's say Hassan never made the admission, but he did just such a blatantly infringing content. But he never made the admission. He never said, don't go to Ethan's channel. But he did the kind of infringing thing. Do you think he would sue Hassan, yes or no?
If Hassan, let's say, this is where I'm going to defer from everybody in reference to this. So if Hassan Piker had done a chair react to Ethan's stream, paused once every 30 minutes in order to say, whoa, that's crazy, then I think Ethan Klein would believe that that was successfully entrapping Hassan and he would be suing Hassan. However, that's not what Hassan did he? Hassan spent 9 hours to break down 40 minutes. I think I got bored after the 60-minute mark. And so as a result, no, I'm not, there's no way in hell you could sue Hassan for not being fair use if he has a 9-hour react to 4 hours worth of content. So no, I think if he had caught Hassan with a lazy, shitty react, he would have sued him, but he wasn't able to because Hassan clearly has a fair use exemption.
Not after he told him to react to it 20 times. No.
Really?
Yes, that is him giving him permission. He is telling him, I want you to react to this on stream. Yes, he said it numerous times. There's no way you can sue somebody after telling them you want them to watch your stuff on stream. They're like, no.
Yeah, I think that would get thrown out of court as well.
No shot.
Well, then I'll ask you, because you said the implied consent in the context of that. Do you think that that's implied consent for other people to do it?
Yeah, if they react properly, Pisco. If they actually do fair use, which I think that Denims and Frogan will be able to argue in court.
Legally, I would say when I said implied consent, I said culturally, like YouTube culture, but I'm not saying legally there's implied consent. No, not at all. But I think in that case, that is consent. I would say that that's explicit consent. Yes, I want you to watch this on your stream 20 fucking times over and over. Just watch it already, bro. Just watch it already. Just review it already. Yes, I would say that that is explicit consent, not implied.
Okay, so I'm pulling this up while they're still arguing, which is, look, if you'll consult your screen, the H3 content nuke is 1 hour and 18 minutes. Denim's content nuke is 4 hours. Okay? If we go through here, I'm not saying this is possible. That's just her staring into the distance. That's her yapping. Here's her laughing and yapping. Here's her making a face. Here's her yapping again. I'm not doing this because I like Denims. I don't like Denims. However, if the original content is 1 hour and 18 minutes and she has a 4-hour runtime, that means that 75% of this is commentary. Look, she's commenting. She's commenting. So Denims should go to court and say, Ethan, stick this up your ass. Because yes, I might have said that I wanted to steal views from you, which is not very nice of me. However, I didn't steal views from you. And on top of that, my work is transformative. So eat a barrel of dicks. I think Denims could successfully say that. Frogan content nuke. So again, it's 1 hour and 18 minutes. Does Frogan even have a VOD channel? I don't see it. But if Frogan had a VOD channel, it depends on how long her react is. But if she's doing insightful commentary for double the watch time, triple the watch time, I think she'll succeed. Problem?
Okay. He also said that he was setting a trap for these people. Who do you think he was setting a trap for?
I think that was also
Hassan, if he was being lazy.
Post hoc, like I think that he was just trying to dramatize it. If I was because what I don't know is if he actually consistently
so he's lying. Wait, is he lying about that then?
I don't know. Again, that's just my thought process. As soon as I watch him saying all this shit, I'm like, no shot, you don't.
In order to believe this is why Tom, I think, is saying this now, because think about because Tom, I think you're recognizing the problem.
Well, I said this when I reviewed it.
This is okay, but in order to think that this is explicit consent for Hassan, you have to think that okay, Ethan was giving explicit consent to Hassan, but he was always also trying to trap the non-Hassan people. And I'm just like, what? Wait, so this was this Machiavellian strategy to give explicit consent to Hassan, but also to do a trap in the and he says it right, like I wanted to make something so good that they would react to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so do you think it's plausible that he was giving explicit consent to Hassan, but still trying to trap the other people into making admissions?
Yeah, no. And this is one of the things that I said is that if he was actually doing this, and this is part of his plan, he would have come out with this when Denims announced a lawsuit against him. He would have said, oh, really? Well, I have a lawsuit against you too, but he didn't. And then now a week or two later, after she closes her lawsuit and says, never mind, then he comes out with this. I think he wanted to just sue her because she was suing him, and that he came up with this whole fucking
You don't think he was
thing.
trying to sue Hassan? You think you didn't think he had a plan to sue Hassan?
Yeah,
because he knew that. Really?
Again, especially not. I don't think he had a plan to sue any of them, but it's just the way that all this happened. It seems weird. And again, he gave explicit consent.
Then he's lying.
Yeah, probably.
So you think he's probably lying about? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like Ethan. I think he's kind of weaselly.
But that's my problem then. My problem is if he's lying about stuff, I just don't. And I think he's lying about the savior rationale. I think he's being or at least disingenuous. I don't think that. So even in your version, Tom, you think that Ethan is lying about setting a trap?
Yeah.
All right, checking in with chat. I think he can set the trap for the Hassan orbit and for Hassan, but it obviously didn't work on Hassan because Hassan didn't want to watch it. Then once he said, please react to it, he probably gave him some level of consent, and so he could no longer sue. And then also Hassan didn't do a lazy react. He didn't pause every 30 minutes to go, huh, that's crazy. And so as a result, Hassan wouldn't have been able to be sued anyways. So yeah, he might have had some Machiavellian attempt to entrap Hassan. However, it obviously didn't shake out the way that he wanted it to. Ebad13 says, do you think Pisco is making this as a big deal because he's grifting to Hassan? He mentioned it 50 times during his reaction vid. I certainly hope not. Like, no offense to any Hassan viewers, actually much offense to Hassan viewers. Every single bit of content that I've ever engaged with Hassan is something happens. He goes on a mildly related geopolitical rant where he explains like a bunch of history that doesn't prove a specific point, and then he continues watching the content. And then he just does that over and over and over again. And so it's like the most like 90 IQ analysis of anything I've ever observed ever. And so I've never found Hassan to be insightful or smart. The only time he's ever charismatic is when he's talking about like personal drama bullshit, where he's talking about like girl relationships and all that kind of shit. Like I've never actually seen him be a good commentator. LB says, didn't Nintendo years back warn YouTubers not to review their games or consoles? YouTubers need a union. Yeah, but Nintendo can also suck a barrel of wieners if they go under copyright, because you can appeal a copyright and then they have to take you to court. Excuse me. Seashell says, Pisco debates are super unproductive because he's too bad faith and aggressive. I don't agree. We have fun. MT says, I don't think Pisco is bad faith. He just has like this expert issue of being unable to comprehend another person's arguments outside of the lens of his own expertise. Maybe. But I still think we're able. Pisco and I have had really complex conversations about really complex topics. Bakar Balidi says, Connor, it's all subjective, and at the end of the day, up to the judge. If you can establish intent, then the day will be more likely to rule not fair use. Why? Fair use doctrine has nothing to do with stated intent to steal. Fair use guidance. Fair use is a legal doctrine that permits limited use of copyrighted material without permission from the copyrighted holder. It's a crucial exception to copyright law, balancing the rights of creators with the public interest in accessing and using information. To determine if a use is fair, courts consider 4 factors: the purpose and character of the use, the nature of the copyrighted work, the amount and substantiality of the portion used, and the effects of the use on the potential market of the copyrighted content. So the purpose and character of the use. This factor examines whether the use is transformative, adds new meaning or expression, or merely copies the original work. Educational, news reporting, and critical commentary uses are often favored. Commercial uses are generally viewed less favorably. But guess what? We have a hybrid between educational, news reporting, and commentary versus commercial, because we are making money off of critique and commentary. So right here, I would say that this is a balance. This doesn't go one way or the other. Nature of the copyrighted work. Using factual works is generally more permissible than using highly creative or fictional works. For example, quoting from a news article is more likely to be considered fair use than quoting from a novel. Okay, well, we're talking about people's opinions on the internet. So these are factual. So I would actually say that a lot of this stuff goes towards factual works. Amount and substantiality of the portion used. Using a small portion of work is more likely to be considered fair use. However, even a small portion can be problematic if it's in the heart of the original work. And not just that, but the how do I phrase this? Sometimes the entire thing can be fair use. So if it's a 3-minute clip, you can use the whole 3-minute clip. If you're doing a response video and the response, let's say the original content is an hour long, but you need to know what's in all of that content in order to respond to it, then I think that's probably going to get ruled fair use. Effect on market value. This factor assesses whether or not the use harms the copyright holder's ability to profit from their work. If the use serves as a substitute for the original, it's less likely to be considered fair. So what I would say is Casey Trons is not transformative because she only has 30 minutes of commentary and half of it is smoking weed. So she only adds 15 minutes to an hour and 18 video. It is a factual work because it's basically people's stated opinions. The substantiality of the portion used, she used the whole thing. effects on the market, she is trying to provide a market substitute. So I actually would say that Caseytron is pretty screwed based off of these 4 factors. When it comes to denims, though, they might have used the entire thing, but they tripled the runtime. So if they have insightful commentary, critical and commentary, even though it's being used commercial, I think they're going to be able to make a pretty strong argument under this first factor. The nature of the commentary thing, I would argue that it's factual, because it's effectively like an assessment of somebody's opinions at a specific time and place. It's not like a Star Wars movie, right? Amount used is arguable, and then effect on the market. They can have the stated desire to hurt the market of Ethan Klein's work, but I don't think they did. I think they effectively acted as a marketing wing. They effectively popularized it. So even if they had the stated intent to hurt the market value, I don't think they actually did that in fact. What if they call it commentary fan fiction based? Brandon says Nintendo tried operating under Japanese copyright law, which is a lot more strict. They were heavily criticized for it and have eased up a bit. True. Jason Mashak says, why does Counterpoints say they are going to have to calculate damages? Ethan registered the copyrighted specifically so we could get statutory damages? No. I don't even know what the difference would be between like statutory is like 150K, I heard somebody say. Sure. Grassroots says, hey, fellow Nick D. Chud. So Jason Mashak, I'm actually going to respond to this. I'm not a lawyer. I don't have a JD, okay? So Pisco can correct me if I'm wrong. But in order to be entitled, let's say that the statute says, if you violate the statute, you can be entitled to up to 150K per violation or something like that. Well, in order to receive that payout, I think you have to show that you suffered some kind of damage. So what Ethan Klein could do is show that Caseytron did not sufficiently transform his work and that she got 1 million views. And then he could calculate that and say, okay, well, 1 million views is $4,000 in AdSense. So, and she also got, I don't know, $1,000 in super chats. So as a result, we want $5,000 back from Caseytron. And I think he would be entitled to that under the statutory limits. However, Frogan and Denims, I think, are going to be able to, if they so choose, to successfully argue a fair use exception based off of the criteria that we did. At least I would, especially if my runtime was 4 hours and the original piece was 1. Kingslayer for $5. Thank you for the super chat, King. Sargon got sued years ago. He took a 4-second clip and put it on the end and changed the title. The court said fair use. H3 doesn't have a chance. I wouldn't say H3 doesn't have a chance because they could settle out of court. And also, I think Caseytron is in a more precarious position than the other 2 creators. I'm going to read like another 5 chats because frankly, Pisco and Tom are boring me a bit, but we'll give them another opportunity to move to another subject and then we'll wrap it up and move into the next segment. LB says you can sue anyone. Doesn't mean you'll win. True. You can beat the rap, not the ride. KO Dave says, as crazy as the filings are, the case itself is solid, and I don't think the fines will meaningfully impact that. Also, hi, Connor. Well, KO Dave, I just addressed the 4 levels of fair use. I would be curious to hear your rebuttal arguments about my assessment. Pavlo Tykolov says, the fire pit meme is from Destiny. Yeah, we'll do that. Christian Blair says, Dan is not a brokey, therefore the fireside chat is tongue-in-cheek. Okay, well, we'll take a look at it. Seaflan says, you don't know the fire pit meta? Do you yourself have a fire pit in your backyard? I don't. Destiny does not think they exist in rural homes. That's crazy. Sasha Lynn says, counterpoints. That was from a comment that was said way earlier, so now the comment is very out of place. Lol. Well, it happens. That's what happens. I'm interested in my chat. I love you guys. We got, what? We're bouncing between 160 and 200. We're at 190 right now. So what that tells me is that I got my 70 to 100 original viewers who I parasocially love. That's the core of the Counterpoints meta. And then it seems like we got an extra 50 to 100 DGGers and people who might hate or love Destiny who also popped into chat and they're trying to figure out whether or not they like my content. So I parasocially love all of you and I want to read what you have to say. And if I'm 30 minutes late, my apologies, but I'm going to read what you have to say. Jason Mashak says, conservative liberalism sucks that viewers have to wait 20 minutes to maybe have a question answered. Well, I just answered your question, so suck it. The other option, Jason Mashak, is I just ignore chat. That's the other option. The other option is you super chat me and I only respond to super chats, because when I have more than 100 people, I can't answer them all. Sasha says, I don't know, man. Expecting a lawyer to understand that people are capable of having multiple motivations is just asking way too much. Oh, that's funny. All right, 2 or 3 more and then we'll get back to it. Christian Blair says, Doobie has always been brain broken contrarian. Sometimes. General Ballsack says, lift weights, counterpoints, trying to be the Joe Rogan of the left. Lol. Well, as long as you accept my chud takes. Why is Tom so hesitant to just say yes? He doesn't want to fall into a logic trap. Val says, my enlistment was like 1/3 patriotism, 1/3 boredom, and 1/3 wanting to get out of bumfuck Tennessee. Exactly. All right. Anyways, Jason Mashak says, I guess I'll just have to search the VOD. I tried, Connor. Okay, no problem. Pugio Fidel with Ben Thorpe says, hey, chat. Hi, Pugio. All right. Anyways, back to the content. Let's see if they can make another point.
Yeah, sure. So let me explain like my thought process is like there's a bunch of people that I would love to sue. They're just a bunch of pieces of shit. If I could find something to sue them on, or if I had like the resources or whatever, I would do it. But there's like a line there where I need them to actually like cross that line in order for me to feel as though I would actually be vindicated in doing so. Whereas I could find any little thing to do it, but I would need them to actually do something that's above and beyond in
That's
order
vindictive
to
as
do it,
fuck.
right?
Isn't the more plausible scenario?
Matter of fact, I'm gonna chair react. I'm gonna steal some content. I'm gonna use the bathroom and grab some water. I'll be right back. Enjoy the chair react.
He was planning to sue this entire time, and that's why he registered the copyright, because he knew doing so gives this the remedy in court and the statutory damages. Like he was pre-registered because he intended to sue, and so I don't know why you would say you think he's lying about that. I think he was telling the truth.
Maybe.
The problem is,
That's what I was saying. I don't know if he does this
rationale.
regularly.
does what regularly? He does what? Regularly?
Pre-registers his content, because if I was his size, I would. If I was his size, I would definitely be pre-registering.
Really? You would pre-register every stream and every video you drop?
Yes,
if you weren't
and
that size?
in the
That is not
past
common
when he
practice.
and when he talked about it, he said that like a while ago, he said, I'm opening up my IP in my copyright, and that like I've talked to my lawyers, like we're allowing people to use
really?
IP to a certain extent. He drew some lines around it, but he said like to a certain extent. And so it sounded to me like he was copywriting everything back then, but maybe not. I don't know.
Oh, I wasn't aware of this. So he made statements saying he's quote opening up his IP.
Mm-hmm.
I might need to revisit those statements then.
So he has changed it numerous times since. So he said it a while ago, a couple years ago, then later said, okay, we do have to start like changing this a little bit. And now he's like, because one of the problems is we're starting to make things members only, and people are stealing the members only content and then putting it up. And this is becoming a problem, because then nobody has an incentive to be a member anymore. And so then he changed it again later, saying, hey, there's channels that are uploading a lot of our content. It is like fair use as long as you're like trying or something. We're not going to take you down or anything. But if you're just re-uploading full bonds, so yeah.
I will take a look at those statements. That might make things more interesting. And from the license, I'll take a look at those statements, what kind of caveats he puts in. You know, if you're opening up your IP, you know, you better be careful about how you phrase it. That's all I'll say, because I was yelling at Lycan before. A lot of the case law he was pointing to had to do with like open licenses and stuff like that. I'm gonna need to take a second look at that case law, given those statements, and I might have to look at those statements. So
I don't know. One of the things that's very annoying. So I'm a queefer. Okay, I watch Queeman sometimes. I'll tell you my commentary consumption habit. Okay. First off, I watch Nick DiOrio because he's fat, he's funny, he flaunts his wealth. You know, he's like, oh, I still work my normal job and I make a 6-figure income, and then I do my streams on the side and I make a 6-figure income. So when I get money, I don't donate it to charity. I buy a $30,000 watch, which, by the way, so fucking rude, so fucked up, so funny. Like I'm furious. I'm furious that he has a $30,000 Rolex. But you know, this is capitalism, so get good, I guess. So good for Nick DiOrio, realistically. So I watch Nick DiOrio because he's fairly like normie and American. Then I watch Chud Logic, then I watch Queeman. But Queeman is kind of a schizo, I'm not gonna lie. And one of the things that he said was like, oh, here's this clip of Ethan Klein opening up his IP. And it's a clip of Ethan Klein who's saying, like, what he's saying is Ethan Klein wants the Hassan Industrial Clip Complex. But then it cuts off. But if you watch the immediate 30 seconds after when the clip cuts off, he says, but I don't want you to be stealing my VODs. Like, I don't want you to take the whole video and then just repost it. I want you to do like funny clips and cut up the clips. So he wanted clip channels. He didn't want people to be jacking his VODs. But the way Caseytron and the way Denims and the way Frogan and the way the Simps are using it is they're saying like, oh, well, Ethan gave everybody blanket IP use in perpetuity to just jack his VODs. And I feel like that's like a 60 IQ analysis. And frankly, I expected better out of Queeman. As a queefer, I expected better out of Queeman. Biz D says, if you keep saying YouTube is a private business, Elon might buy it. True. Triggered says VOD slot. True. KO Dave says Kyle Rittenhouse has a YouTube following. Gross. Well, you're not going to like my Kyle Rittenhouse takes. Lol. Christian Blair says, don't use the moniker lol. He can thank Dan for getting Juice Stalker banned, which I don't care about. Yeah, whatever. Pugio says, Counterpoints, I really admire your style. I'd love to get in the ring with you sometime. Sure. That sounds great. I mean, rhetorical or physical. If you're ever in Central Florida, let me know. Pugio says, I wanted to talk with you way back when about the Pixie Destiny thing, but you said the time wasn't right. Yeah, we could probably at some point do it. DD222E says, why is Pisco soying out? He loves soy. He's a lefty now. It's fine. He was always a little bit progressive. Randy Chang says, Pisco's farming. He's deliberately overstating for farming purposes. Well, guess what? He's trying to be an entertainer. She probably getting... Whoa, okay. All right. Somebody's getting Daddy Marlboro Reds. Good for them. Oh, you're talking about Grace Thorpe. Okay, be nice. Be nice. Be nice. All right, last one or two, then we'll get back into it. And then basically when they bore me again, I'm going to pause and move into the next content. Schween says, blame Tom Foolery. Don't get it twisted. It's not Pisco. It's Tom non-sequiting, strawmanning, and refusing to answer straight, lol. Yeah, and that's what I would encourage Twitch and YouTube political debate people. If somebody is lining you up for a logic trap, concede to descriptive reality. Otherwise, people are going to assume that you're slippery and dishonest. D22E says, Pisco graduated from the Nebraska Steve School of Debate. If you don't get your answer, keep coming back until you get it. Yep. All right.
Oh, I'm just saying, I didn't know that he potentially opened himself up to that argument by, quote, opening up IP. I'm going to revisit those statements actually a little bit more carefully.
Yeah. I stand by what I said 2 minutes ago.
But I'm glad that we can agree, at least from your perspective, he's lying about one thing. He's lying about the fact that this was planned from the start. I think that's a preposterous. Like, why would you say that he's lying about that this was a plan to sue, when it seems pretty, like, he says that he was planning to sue. He registered his work. He's trying to at least bait people into watching it, right? And so wouldn't the more plausible lie be, well, this was all to protect the community? That's what I take to be the more plausible lie. And we can just, I think, very plausibly say that what's motivating him is not protecting the community. It's going after his enemies. And that's, again, fine. But
well, I think it's more so he doesn't want to do something that would also...
All right, I'm good. So basically, again, this is another thing that I disagree with Pisco on. I think you can have multiple motivations at one time. So in summary, we're going to summarize real quick. I'm going to go full screen. In summary, let me move so you guys can see my beautiful face and I can see yours. I need a haircut so bad, man. Anyways, in summary, Ethan Klein is going after people vindictively. Okay, that's true. He could also want to defend the commentary community from hurting itself by having insufficiently transformative content, and he cited Disney and other large media companies stepping in and hammering us with bad precedent as potentially screwing up the entire meta. So him stepping in and attacking his rivals might potentially set good legal precedent. And so as a result, I think that Frogan and Denim should defend themselves, because I think that with the amount of runtime that they have, if they have insightful commentary, they might have a fair use exception and therefore could win in court. I think that Ethan is going to have to prove some level of actually sustained damages in order to hurt Frogan and to hurt Denims. When it comes to Caseytron, I think it's a little bit more forward because not only did she say that she was intentionally trying to siphon views away from the original content, but you can actually say that she only added 15 minutes of commentary, which wasn't very insightful at all. She effectively just repeated over and over again that she didn't know what was going on because she was stoned out of her mind. And then another 15 minutes of runtime is just her smoking pot. So I think Caseytron has the weakest case out of all three of the litigants, I guess is what they're called. And that I think Pisco's going too hard because I don't know. I think he's just going too hard in the opposite direction. And then I think that Tom was too defensive. He just needed to concede descriptive reality and move on. So anyways. I parasocially love each and every single one of you for being here. Please like the stream. That is free. Super chats if you got them. Donate memberships if you got them.